a regional strategy for sub-Saharan Africa of SRHR, including HIV, with a particular focus on groups that are left behind, including many times women living with HIV. At the bilateral level, in Rwanda, Sweden supports a couple of NGOs working to provide stigma-free services to marginalized people, including women living with HIV, and also to drive adequate national policies to support them. So let us ensure that the voices and the leadership of women living with HIV are heard, that they are at the center of our strategies and policies and our partnerships. So I really look forward to learning from you today and hearing your experiences and initiatives. And on behalf of the Embassy, I'd like to thank you for your very hard work, your commitment, and also for your continued contribution to this vital agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa. It's an honor to have you with us today. So I'm going to introduce our first two speakers of the day, Susan Cole, who will be speaking to us virtually, and Charity Mukona. Susan Cole is an award-winning HIV activist, public speaker, writer, broadcaster, and health equity changemaker. She has over 2 decades of leadership in the HIV space, spearheading innovative initiatives with global health. Oops, that was fast.
Sorry, I'm home.
We'll get right back to her. She has over 2 decades of leadership in the HIV sector, spearheading innovative initiatives with national and global impact, particularly for women and people from racially minorized communities. She's a board member of the Global Network of People Living with HIV, a member of the 4M Network, and a co-founder and executive director of the Phoenix Health Movement. She is also a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, invited for her work in tackling health inequities and HIV. I'm also going to introduce Charity so she can come up right after Susan's talk. Charity is a passionate advocate and feminist with a strong commitment to the rights and well-being of women. She has dedicated many years to advancing gender equality and social justice, focusing on improving the lives of women living with HIV through advocacy, policy reform, and public health initiatives. She currently serves as board chairperson of ICW Global. Charity has been a vocal leader in addressing the unique challenges faced by women in the context of HIV as she continues to push for better access to healthcare, legal protections, and social support systems for women living with HIV.
Good afternoon. Are we tired? I see a lot of women here. Let's raise our voices. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Glad to hear that. That's better. Okay, so I'm glad to be here this afternoon and to be part of this session. Women, we know what waits, and we are on the ground, and we're making it possible that things should continue to work. So I have a presentation, and I'll take you through the presentation. And my presentation is on science and sisterhood, demanding a gender transformative HIV response rooted in women's lived experience and leadership. We can go to the next page. Okay, so I'll just give you a brief background of ICW. ICW is the only global organization for women living with HIV, and it was established in 1992. And at the meantime, ICW as a global sisterhood, we are working in different regions. ICW North America, Caribbean, Latina, West Africa, and the list goes on and on. So we are in so many regions. And as I already started, cultivating the leadership of women living with HIV. ICW is the only global network of women living with HIV, and we are leading advocacy, research, and accountability. ICW also, we are advancing women leadership in HIV response and centers lived experience as a powerful and unique expertise. So what we are doing at the meantime is driving feminist frameworks in HIV response through tools like the ICW Feminist School, participatory and gendered research such as Stigma Index, and also recently we just had a global scan and also cohesive practices, which has resulted in to be a success. So, framing the moment, already as Ophelia was speaking here, was like, I'm seeing like the threats. No, they're not threats. Even the funding cuts, they cannot be threats to us. We have made a lot of strides and we have achieved a lot of initiatives, and now we have to frame this moment. How do we frame this moment? The crisis is over. This is not a time for crisis. We are redefining opportunities now. This is time for us to take an action. And as women already we have strategized, we are moving forward. We are not waiting on this and waiting for more days to go, no. This is not just a frame funding cuts, but it cannot be a threat to us. So we're moving on as people who are working on HIV. So the global health funding crisis is not just gender neutral. More than 53% of women living with HIV are women, and prior to the crisis, women living with HIV were 8 times more likely to die during childbirth and postpartum. And we had a survey of cuts of HIV programs in 44 LMICs in early 2025, and it reviewed a lot of service disruptions, as 1 in 5 women unable to obtain medication, and also nearly 1 in 3 pregnant women face severe barriers to maternal care, and also many expressing increased vulnerability to violence. So, women, we have already noted that the HIV funding cuts disproportionately impact women living with HIV, trans women, sex workers, and women who use drugs. Therefore, we have already started putting in place some mechanisms to make sure that we are part of the process, and we are making sure that we are meaningfully and greatly involved in the processes ahead of us. And in March alone, nearly 15% of women in community HIV roles, including peer educators, community health workers, and advocates, lost their jobs. We are all aware this happened in all globally, so our countries are facing this, and we are going through this at the meantime. But we are there, and we're making sure that we are keen, we put our keen interest to make sure that we see how this goes. We need to win this. And shrinking civic space further limits also women participation in leadership. Moving on, we are looking forward to gender transformative responses. This is where we're putting our eyes as women, and this is where we're prioritizing our work. That one is just Kimberly Springer, one of our ICW, our Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, who is also one of the powerful leaders of women organizations, women networks. So what are we talking about when we come up to gender transformative responses? We are talking about beyond inclusion, address root causes, and also seek systematic change. How do we do that? We need to go beyond inclusion. We need to aim to shift power and challenge structural inequality. How? Going beyond, we need to not to just simply include women and marginalized groups, no. We should aim to challenge and change the underlying power structures, the norms and systems that perpetuate inequality. And we also need to keep in our mind that a beyond inclusion approach ensures health interventions to actively reshape policies and practices to promote equity, agency, and justice for all. So as women, we need to make sure that we are part of this. Moving on to address root causes, we need to make sure that we address patriarchy, harmful norms, and also power imbalances. How do we do this? We need to make sure that we challenge discriminatory norms, power imbalances, and also system barriers. And also, we need to make sure that some of these are patriarchy and unequal access to resources and harmful social norms. We have to make sure that we have to challenge this, and that so that we can sustain gender-based disparities. And the last one on gender transformative, we looked at 6 systems change. We really need to make sure that change the systems, not just fit women into it, but we have to be part of the actors. We need to take part fully, not just women are part of, but we have to make sure that we are part of that change. So moving on, women and science, just more than adults still, we lead. We are leading. And I know all women, all of us who are here, we know that we are leading. We are empowered. We have talked about this for a long time. We are empowered, our capacity was built, and now we are strong, we can do a lot. So, ICW is at the meantime founding partner in the Stigma Index, and we have been there since its inception and during the evolution Stigma Index 2.0. And also in 2020, we received some support from UNAIDS to address gaps on Stigma Index, gender equity and analysis. And again in 2025, we are leading the technical assistance to countries implement stigma index. And also we are coordinating the international partnership on stigma index. So we are making progress as women and leaders. Moving on, we're going through gender analysis and participatory research. Why gender analysis and why now? Why do we need gender analysis now? We need to continue building power through powerful stories. Women, we have told a lot of stories, and we still have a lot of stories. We are telling stories. They have an impact because they are what moves the world, that brings change. So we have to continue telling our stories. And it's a priority now for women living with HIV to make sure that we go into participatory research, because it reveals the unique challenges we face. This is where we're getting all the information to make sure that all the rooted in gender inequality, social norms, and also power imbalances that stand approach, or which are often missed, that they are discovered. So by prioritizing gender analysis, programs and policies on becoming more effective and equitable and responsive to the real needs of women living with HIV, we are ensuring that we are leaving no one behind. So this is why we are moving to gender analysis and participatory research. And women living with HIV have for many years expressed concerns about coercive practices in healthcare settings, of which most of the times it was taken like it's just part of life, where they went, which healthcare center they went to, maybe it's just one or two people. But now that we are telling stories, there is more to this. So using a gender analysis of existing stigma index data, we have been able to show a systematic pattern of coercive practices, and also a pattern that without the leadership of women living with HIV, this would have remained hidden. So, what have we done? ICW Global Cohesive Scan. This is also one of the agenda that is going on with us, and I'm happy to inform you that we'll have a full session. It should be Thursday. My colleague Karen will have a presentation where she will present all the methodologies and everything that went through the global cohesion scan that we just recently did. So, confronting cohesion, what are we doing? We are on stigma index, and also qualitative studies, surveys, and also scoping review of existing structures. And just to share briefly, because this will have is also another session with all more detail, but key findings are on this. 4.4 of women living with HIV reported experiences of coercive practices in the past 12 months. And nearly 20% of women living with HIV who participated in a stigma index study reported experiencing some form of coercive practice in their lifetime. This is all because we're able to tell stories. And also across regions, coercive practices were concentrated around pregnancy and infant feeding. So our research found that coercion, mistreatment and abuse experienced by women living with HIV, including women from key populations, are frequently not reported and underreported. Because most of us were like, this is normal, this is what can happen to anyone. But now that we're able to voice out, we're able to speak and tell a story and tell another person, we're able to be guided and know where to go and what to do. And also we noted that most cases are persistent, widespread and normalized and routines. So systematic and structural problems are reinforcing harmful social norms, discriminatory and also out-of-date policies and practices, and lack of meaningful efforts to confront these practices. So what we need to do, we need to have immediate, medium and long-term negative impacts that are coming because of the stories that we are telling, what we are not saying. So this is affecting well-being of women living with HIV, and also brings fear of accessing services, and also can result to disempowerment. So, why women leadership matters, and why now? We are celebrating our successes. Today we are telling us all successful stories. We are not dwelling much on challenges and other things. So what do? Gender equity, women's rights are under attack. And as women, let us open our eyes and look ahead of us so that we should not miss anything. And Why this is matter? Institutions alone cannot deliver gender equity or justice. Women's priorities and needs are first on the chopping block, leading to deprioritization of gender equity, equality, and prevention of vertical transmission. And community-led monitoring, grievances redress systems, and research must involve fully women living with HIV. So it's my plea once again, women, if we don't talk, if we don't open eyes, if we don't see what is happening on the ground, we might become, the gender issues, gender equality might become an option. We need to make sure that we open our eyes and see what is happening. And yet we are also noticing that women living with HIV know where systems fail and how to fix them, because we know what is working and what is not working. So we need to make sure that our leadership is strategic and not symbolic. Let us be on the ground, let us act, let us take an action. And community-led programs are more effective, sustainable, and grounded in rights. So, what works for women? As we look ahead, that's myself and my colleague Sita from Nepal. So what works? Institutionalized gender analysis. This works because it embeds gender awareness in policies and health services, and also ensures unique needs and experiences recognized and addressed. Participatory research empowers women living with HIV to define our priorities and also shape interventions to drive advocacy. And the third one is investing in women-led responses. Through empowering women, it leads and drives responses, transform outcomes, and ensure interventions to contextually grounded, right-centered, to be, and also sustain scale. And the last one is support accountability. Women leaders, we are part. If we are part of supporting all the accountability and making sure that the funds and the resources are being used into use of what was the purpose, this is also having an impact that we are making progress because we have our eyes on the ground. So, what is our next step? Our next step is a call to action. We are calling to action. Women, we need to make sure that now is the time for bravery. We demand that women and girls are at the center of response, meaningfully and also greatly involved. So we are calling for this action, and recently we had a publication which the title is Be Brave, Women and Girls Need to Remain at the Center of HIV Response. So we continue to call for action, and those are the details. You can go to our website, we have a lot of publications, and also the report of our cohesive scan is also found on that, so we can grab more information. Thank you very much. This is my presentation. Thank you for attention.
I'm delighted to be here today to ensure that the voices also include experiences of trans people, to share a little bit about our experience, our work, and hopefully to trigger you a little bit also. So, you know, in my marriage, I will tell you something. When I saw the name Woman Knows What Works, always, when my children are gonna be asking for something difficult to father, the answer is always, ask your mother. And we hear that in our stories everywhere. Woman knows what works, yet the world is not listening. When we talk about HIV responses, and trans women are often discussed in the context of prevention. Today, I'll shift that a little bit to talk about lived experience as trans women living with HIV. Let me start by sharing a little bit of myself. As Larkin shared, I'm Erika Castellanos. I have the honor to serve as Executive Director of a global trans organization. An indigenous woman who lived in the streets, who did sex work to survive, who lived and grew up in a country where you would go to jail for 10 years for being who you are. I stand here today leading a global organization, and that's the power that women have. I live with HIV since 1995, and I can tell you something. It changed my life. It changed my life for the better, because I was able to do something for others. I was able to look and draw hope for every face, every child, every woman who was struggling. And I learned to live in community. In communities that are there to hold each other's hands, to help you take your pills, to go through very difficult moments and decisions, to accompany each other in the loss. That is what community is. And that's what women do with each other. We stand with each other. Transgender women living with HIV face multiple challenges that compound each other. Stigma related to gender identity, social marginalization, discrimination in healthcare, limited employment opportunities, and high levels of violence. I know you're asking yourself already how it's that different from all other women. You are right. We live in a patriarchal system that puts all women into that bucket. Despite these barriers, trans women and women living with HIV across the globe are leading groundbreaking efforts to claim space, to claim rights, to claim dignity, and to be here in the HIV response. We have trans-led organizations and individual women and trans women who have constantly demonstrated exceptional resilience. But I am fucking tired of being resilient. I need respect and I need equal opportunity. No more reliance on thick skin and resilience. We have successfully advocated for policies that provide gender-affirming care integrated into HIV treatment. That is a huge win. Trans women have led community-driven research that has influenced global guidelines in WHO, UNAIDS, the Global Fund. These are concrete achievements driven directly by the lived experience of trans women, by the lived experience of women. And that is an asset that often goes unrecognized. Despite all these challenges, barriers remain. Access to treatment is often compromised by healthcare systems that fail to acknowledge gender identity. Systems that were not made for the user. To genuinely celebrate the successes of women, of trans women, of all women living with HIV, we must invest in leadership of women. We must meaningfully include the voices of women in every step. Policy design, program implementation, and evaluation. The global HIV response cannot achieve its goals without the full inclusion and support of women. And also, a message for us women. We need to ensure that the anti-rights movement, the anti-gender movement does not divide us. They are succeeding and they're creating groups here and groups there, putting our identities against each other. If we allow that, we lose. So we should look at our commonalities and build on each other, take each other's hands and strengthen each other if we wish to succeed. Today, let's commit not only to celebrating the past successes, but to ensuring that every trans woman, every woman living with HIV has the resources, the recognition, and the respect to continue thriving. I look forward to dialogue and welcome your thoughts during our upcoming discussion. And a big question, are you ready to support women?
And I'm not ashamed to be called a sex worker anyway. In Zimbabwe, we use a Shona name called Hure. So when you are going around in the street, they call you Hure. So we are not ashamed to be called Hure in Zimbabwe. I'm going to be presenting about the challenges being faced by sex workers in Zimbabwe after the Trump stop order. The unheard voices, mental health and welfare of sex workers in Zimbabwe passed the stop order by the Trump administration. In Zimbabwe, we have made strides in addressing HIV prevention among key populations, which are sex workers, transgender women, and people who use drugs. And in 2024, the US government issued a stop order which affected our community, which were benefiting from the key population friendly clinics which were run by USAID under PSHI. Who are we talking about? We are talking about sex workers in Zimbabwe in their diversity, transgender, gender diverse persons, including also male sex workers, which we're working with. By vulnerable, we are talking about the sex workers getting support or health care services, HIV treatment, STI treatment, and also getting counseling when there is gender-based violence, and also criminalization and social inclusion of the sex workers in Zimbabwe. And the effect of the stop order by the Trump administration came as a surprise, and there was a lot of anxiety, there was a lot of mental health issues, and also it affected the safe spaces which we have created for the sex workers in their diversity. As organizations which were being supported by PSI under the PREVENT program, which was supported by USAID, we have established. Okay, so we're talking about the effects of the stop order by the Trump administration. It affected the community a lot, especially the sex workers, the aging sex workers, which were getting healthy care support from the PSI clinics, which were being supported by the USA government. And also we had sex workers who were working as micro planners, who were going around the community, mobilizing other sex workers, transgender persons to go and seek health care services, where their jobs were cut and they were left without any income. And also some of the workers that we were having as micro planners, they were transgender persons who were chased away from home, and in order for us to make sure that they have income, we took them in as micro planners, and they were getting monthly income from working as micro planners. And when the stop order was issued, they were left with no work, they were left with nowhere to go. And at the meantime, we have 3 transgender sex workers who we are housing at our offices. And also, just to mention that because of the rentals cuts, we were getting most of our money from PSH under the PREVENT program. We are only left with 2 months to be at the place where we are operating from, and from there we don't know where we are going to go because we can no longer afford the monthly rentals, which is about 1.5 thousand per month. And also as we were working at our DICs with the sex workers, we are facing a lot of challenges where we are having increased police raids and harassment, especially when our community members go to report at the police. They were told that you put this on yourself, and they are not getting services at all from the police officers. And when you get services, it means you have to pay in kind by having sex with the police officers who are helping you with your cases. And the general welfare concerns for the sex workers, at the moment, there is housing insecurity and homelessness. As I've alluded to that, some of the sex workers, trans sex workers who were working as micro planners were chased away from home. So when we let them work as micro planners, we're trying to give them something to look after themselves, where they would buy their own food, pay their own rentals, But since the Trump administration cut, they can no longer do that. There's also increased dependence on unsafe clients or practices for survival. We have also an issue of condoms in Zimbabwe. And for the sex workers to get more money from their clients, they are now resorting to having sex without condom, where they are paid more money than when we have sex with someone without with a condom. So it's also a cause for concern because there is a high rise of STIs among the sex workers. And when they go to the clinics which are there now, they are facing challenges because they are not KP friendly. The clinics are not KP friendly at all. Even the ones that we have been working with under the PSI program, when our trans-identified friends go to seek health care services, sometimes they are denied the services with the very same people that they were working with. And it's a cause for concern for us as well. So we have been going around the 10 provinces of Zimbabwe trying to find out the effect of the Trump order effects on sex workers. And the voices on the ground was like, they no longer have anyone to talk to when things go wrong. The peer educators who were like a family in a lifeline saving, they are no longer there when they want to have counseling or when they want to talk about any issues that have risen in their line of work. Without the project, I skipped ARVs for 2 weeks. There's a concern where the clinics which were giving the sex workers and transgender persons some ARVs and PrEP, they were closed, and now PrEP is being given to pregnant mothers in Zimbabwe. And if you go there as a trans-identifying person and you say you want PrEP, you are not given. So it's a cause for concern. And quotes from an affected sex worker across Zimbabwe was from sex workers from Harare, Mutare and Bulawayo, which also echoed the same sentiments that they were no longer getting KP-friendly health care services from the very clinics that they were working with. The rollback undermines years of progressive initiative in HIV prevention and human rights among the trans sex workers and cisgender sex workers. Sex workers are being marginalized despite evidence of their contribution to health gains. Remember, like I said, we had trained some sex workers, some transgender sex workers to be microplanners who were also helping to bring in the community to seek health services. And we have been getting data from the clinics, but since the Trump stop order, we are no longer allowed to talk about KPs. We are now being asked to talk about general pops. And it's a cause for concern for us because we are no longer able to capture data looking at the transgender or intersex persons or sex workers. So some of the initiatives that we have done as Transmart is to establish community-led emergency response to support sex workers affected by the service shutdown. Create informal referral networks for health care, legal aid, and food support. We have been doing a project where we meet as sex workers, where we meet as transgender, and make some clothes, make some applique, and then sell. But the challenge that we now have is that in Zimbabwe, the market is no longer there, since most of the white people who were buying our products are no longer in Zimbabwe. The only place we are able to sell our products is when we come to places like these AIDS conferences and other workshops, which is not in Zimbabwe at regional level or at international level. So we are also appealing as sex workers and transgender persons for you to support us, because we know that this time that we are in, donor funding is shrinking, And these are some of the initiatives that we have come up with to say we are going to use what we have, and then we will ask for help to get support. Rural-based practices, which also came into effect post-stop order, concluding the distress sensitization to reduce backslash against rural sex workers, engaging faith leaders and elderly through integration dialogues to foster tolerance in the time of emergent need. We have been working with traditional leaders, that is the chiefs, headmen, and in Zimbabwe, where we actually go and sensitize them about the transgender, where we also go and sensitize them about the sex workers, so that when they come across some challenges, they will actually approach the chiefs for support, and then the chiefs, because they have the knowledge, they know that in their community we have sex workers, we have transgender persons, that then they will be able to defend them when the society is against it.